my goodness! Yeah! Holy sh!
Well, hey there folks, welcome back to another slice of the buffoonery, which I call Misfit Toys. Let me show you what we're up to, but first, Kitty here thinks he needs some kibble. It's just fun saying kibble. Come on, you scallywag. Yum yum. Alright, Kitty's satisfied for a while. Oh, excuse me. Now that he's occupied, he won't be under my feet trying to trip me for a little while. What we've got here is a wheeling buggy. Now bear with me. I got a little backstory to tell about this before we get to work on it. I don't know exactly when this was built, but I do remember wheeling with this. I know the guy that built this. Back about mid-2000s, late 2000-ish is when this thing was pretty active here in the southern Iowa wheeling scene, as it is. It's a fairly simple rig, crude by some people's standards, but it was a pretty effective wheeler. Now he sold this, I don't remember at what time, probably about 2010 I would say. Now he sold it to another guy, anyway, the guy that built it, his name's Chris. He sold it to another guy, and I don't remember ever seeing it out on the trails again. I'm not saying it wasn't, I just don't remember it. I didn't know whatever became of it, but it started showing up on Marketplace. Now, this rig in here, this Bronco 2 that's always been in the background, I'm supposed to be building this for my sister and her husband. And I do peck away at it a little bit here and there, but it's been a couple of years since we came up with an agreement, and yeah, it's just taking forever because I have so much other stuff to do. So anyway, as the price on this thing started to drop, I brought it to his attention. He wanted me to go look at it. I went and looked at it, and it was pretty much just as I remembered it. I got back to him, gave him a report on what I thought. I told him I thought it had a lot going for it for the money. It was down to $2,000. He offered the guy $1,800. I gave the guy the offer. A couple hours later, he took it. Now, I told him I would donate these tires to the cause. I paid $200 for these tires and wheels years ago from a friend, and they are dry rotted really bad. I just bought them to do the setup on my 57 Ranchero. Since then, I've put tractor tires on it. These were just sitting up in the weeds, rotting some more. I figure they're good enough to do some wheeling until he finds something else or until they blow out. They are 44s as well. Now, what this is, I believe, is some sort of a blazer frame. It has 1-ton axles, Dana 60 in the front, Dana 70 in the rear. They're both geared at like 586, and both of them are welded into spools. Engine is a 350 Chevy small block, TH350 transmission, and a good old gear-driven 205 transfer case. Good components, that's what I told him. It's got the good, solid components for what you want for the money. Brother-in-law showed up a couple weeks later. We went over and got this. Took the tires over. I didn't hear it run when I, went over to look at it a couple weeks previous to that. But we went over there. When we got there, they had jumper cables on it trying to start it. The starter sounded awful. I pulled the starter off, looked at the gear. It looked okay. Little wear. Put the starter back in. I pushed it in as far as I could and backwards as far as I could. Tighten it back down. And it did sound better, but the engine was basically not cranking. In the 2 weeks since I went and looked at it the first time and going to pick it up, we had a hell of a rainstorm come through. This is pretty much how it sat. It just had an air cleaner lid sitting on it like that. What had happened, water had gotten into the engine and it was just hydrolocked. I went ahead and I pulled all 8 spark plugs out, and I accidentally broke this one and cranked it over. Yeah, water and gasoline shot out of the cylinders. Got that cleared up, put the plugs back in it, and got the cranking on it. Finally got it to start. Didn't run great, but it did run. The engine sounded solid and all that. Now, the owner that was selling it, he told us that it had no brakes. The brake pedal is firm, it just nothing happens. he didn't want to load it on the trailer. The buyer, he didn't want to load it on the trailer. I was the obvious choice because I pretty much am used to driving shit boxes. Okay, I loaded it on there. Yeah, the brakes were just awful. I had to slam the bitch into park to get it from driving, keep it from driving off the front of the trailer. We got it paid for, brought it to my place. It was getting late in the evening. You know, guys being guys, we wanted to unload it and play with it. It would not run for shit once we got it off the trailer. I got to mess around with it, and I found the vacuum line from the back of the carburetor to the brake booster was not even hooked up. As a matter of fact, all of the vacuum lines on it have pieces of tape put over them. I hooked up the brake booster, and that actually did get the brakes working, even though the leverage factor on this pedal is atrocious. It needs a lot more leverage on it. But anyway, got to putzing around with it. As I said, it just would not idle. You had to keep the RPMs up. Got the engine warmed up, and it would crank really hard and backfire through the carbs. That told me it had way too much ignition advance. I backed it off a little bit. That did help. Still wouldn't idle, obviously. But anyway, we kept trying to play with it. The charging system appears to not be working. We were about to give up. We tried going out and playing, but it just would not stay running. So I just told them, well, before you start hating it, let's just give it up. I'll work on it. And after we charged it and started up, it started running a lot better. Not great still, but it would actually, you know, idle with a little bit of, you know, turned up the idle screw on it. And so we went and played a little bit. That little mud hole out here, fucked around in that. And I got my little course up there through the trees and went through that. And yeah, when he was getting on it real hard throttle, I could hear the engine pinging. It finally did die again. Charging system wasn't working. We just pulled it up here in the yard because it was getting pretty well dark by then. But yeah, the pinging, I'm guessing, might have been a timing issue, or it might have been that really stale fuel. But anyway, that brings us up to now. As such, been to a couple of swap meets since he got this, and we have collected a few parts for it. So let's get started, shall we? Now, the first thing that this is going to need is some wiring attention. As you can see, there's a lot of switches there. I don't even remember what does what. There's this speaker wire was running right to the alternator, not alternator, the distributor to power it up, right to the battery. The battery's not in it now. I took it out to charge it. So yeah, the wiring is just a mess. I am going to completely gut all the wiring in this and wire it up the same way that I wire my buggies. Alright, I've been removing wires here for maybe 15 minutes now. Found a couple of issues here, thought I'd point out. I'm sure I'll find more. Got the old clicky-clack fuel pump here. Apparently this one died at some point and somebody just stuck that in there hanging loose like that. Alright, I cut that wire off, getting the wiring off, so yeah. Another thing, I don't know, hold on a second, let me crawl underneath there and show you. Now this here is one of the coolant lines that runs to the rear radiator. It was basically resting up against the exhaust right there. I don't know, maybe at some point it was actually tucked up into the frame rail, like so, away from the exhaust, but I see no signs that it ever was. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing, getting that away from the exhaust. Anyway, back to cutting out more wiring. Alright, this is what I got pulled out so far. I know a CB isn't a bad idea in a wheeling rig, but I'm betting this one doesn't work. So I wanted to get it out of there just to get it out of my way. This battery cable, I can't judge. I have done this, bolted two cables like that together. But as I was trying to get this I was going to actually use it, but I wanted to get this off of it. And in the process of trying to get the tape off, the end came out of this cable. Kitty! Oh, just take a look at this mess of wiring underneath there. Oh my God, that's horrible. Another issue I found so far, this cable was constantly hot coming from the battery. You can see it got up against the exhaust at some point. I bet that was an exciting little show when that grounded out. Anyway, back to it. Alright, I think I finally got everything out of there. Got a Ford type starter solenoid in there, probably reusing that, that's a good thing. The electric fans kind of surprised me back there. There's two of them back there. And they had nice big gauge wiring and heat shrink and everything. And then, yeah, as soon as it dropped underneath the buggy, it had this nice big, you know, fairly decent sized wiring. And then it went to this little thing. Another thing I found on the starter solenoid, they were jumping the large power terminal to the activation solenoid, and they just had this wrapped around it. You know, I don't know if Chris did this or if it was just owners that came after that, but let me show you what we're going to. Just the old straight up parts store universal tractor type switch. This solenoid, this is going to power up the electric fans. It is way overkill. It is a constant duty solenoid. This isn't a starter solenoid from a Ford. This is like snowplow stuff. And I've never done this before, but I wanted to try this. What this button is going to do, I believe this is a engagement button for a mower deck. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the ignition through this. And it will be able to get the engine started cranking without any spark, just to get it going. And then pull out on this, and that will engage the ignition, send spark to the distributor. And the nice thing about this, if he ever rolls it over and needs to shut it down real quick, all he's got to do is just slap this button down to shut the engine down. Alright, got a little problem here. The key switch would be just fine there, but this little push-pull button for the ignition, it actually requires enough effort that's kind of flimsy. Alright, knocked this little piece out of an old piece of steel running board. It's going to mount like so. Gonna have the tractor switch here, oil pressure, water temperature gauges over here, and this will be the power to the, what do I keep trying to call it, the coil? Well, I guess it is the coil, but the power to the distributor will be right here, and that'll leave a little bit of extra room right in here for maybe another switch, because he was talking about he wanted to keep these lights and maybe add a couple bit more. Now, you might have noticed this tack was mounted on a tube right there, but while I was in here, I went ahead and just started cleaning up some stuff. Honestly, I could spend a week cleaning up this vehicle. There are so many rough, sharp edges and brackets that do nothing, that just, oh, that irritates the hell out of me for some reason, but I just kind of stuck with this area. Yeah, remove that tube. I sent a message to the owner. I think the tack looks cool even though it doesn't work. If he wants to go ahead and keep it mounted on there, I'm just going to mount it onto the steering column tube. I did go ahead, round these off. Less sharp corners in here to be banging your knees on and whatnot. But yeah, many more to do, but I need to keep focused on just making this thing wheelable first. It'll take some other fabrication later on. And there's the finished result. Obviously it's not wired yet. I just stuck everything in there to see how it would look. I got to thinking he was wanting a removable steering wheel. He wants to be all racy McRacerton, I guess. And I just happen to have one down there in the shed. I figure I might as well go ahead and do that now while I got the welder out, because it will make wiring this a lot easier, being able to get that steering wheel out of my way. Almost. Damn. Smoosher did pretty good. So this is a rather interesting setup. As you can see, there's splines on the steering valve. Splines in there. If I could focus. There you go. I'm assuming this is off some sort of a combine or tractor or something like that. Obviously the splines go onto that, but all this tube and support do is hold the whole stub shaft in like that and support it a bit. I would like to see a bearing on that, but it seems to be working, so I'm just going to go ahead and run it the way it is. Obviously it looks like he took the end of a steering column shaft from a GM, because that was the Chevrolet steering wheel, and probably welded it into this little stub here. All I'm going to do, here's the little quick release hub. I think you see where I'm going with this. I'm just going to lop that off and plug weld it onto there. I just can't ignore this anymore. This is driving me nuts, like I already mentioned. You've got this thing here that's doing nothing. These are doing nothing. That's doing nothing. That's doing nothing. This big plate here is doing nothing. And this is doing nothing. And then these damn things. All those are doing is adding weight and irritating the hell out of me. I got to do something about them. Aaron's here in his shiny new Dodge to get in on the fun. Well, Aaron's here to help.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm here to try to do something, you know.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to give up on cleaning up the front end. Aaron, we've talked about, he's going to start tackling the steering on it, because there's some issues I'll show you in a second. But while he's doing that, I can hopefully stay out of his way and finish up the wiring that I started yesterday. Now let's check out the steering, shall we, Aaron?
We shall.
This has got hydraulic steering. You already saw the steering valve. I did that yesterday with the wheel. There's the ram down there. Anybody see a problem with that? This just amazed me. Sorry, Chris, but I got to call you out on this one. I'm assuming you did this and not another owner, but the hydraulic lines going into the steering cylinder on the bottom, that is just, I don't know how that ever survived this long. But I know damn well it ain't going to survive the kind of wheeling we do. Another issue I see, the steering ram is kind of on the small side. That, what, 1.5 inch you think? 1.25 inch?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, to me minimum is the 2-inch ram. And I got one there. And one more thing. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this. The way the ram is attached right here to the tie rod. That is not, what's the word I'm looking for here? Parallel?
Yeah.
Or straight on with the rod. It's mounted on the bottom side, and every time the steering changes directions, that will cause this tie rod to rock one way or the other, which is extremely hard on. I said hard on. It's very hard on these tie rod ends, having just rocking that violently, because it's not just movement, it's actually putting quite a bit of force on those too. So Aaron's got more experience doing hydraulic steering with leaf springs. He's old school that way.
That's right.
And he's going to tackle that, and I'll get on the wiring. Aaron, what'd you do to it?
I crossed its eyes.
I missed it, but I got to see him spray hydraulic oil all over himself from that ram, too.
It was awesome. I appreciated it.
The sloppy. I don't know if we're going to address that at this point or later down the road. He's making progress. Doesn't seem like I am. All I've got done is got the solenoid mounted, and I'm getting ready to build a battery tray out of some bed frame angle iron. Aaron's out there cleaning the old tab off of that tie rod. I believe I came up with a solution to the sloppy tie rod end. This seems to fit in the knuckle, but I need to get all this crap off of there. So I'm going to take a break from working on that battery tray and wiring, get this cleaned up to keep him going. Aaron's got this end all ready to go. He's just waiting on my monkey ass to get finished up with that tie rod end. Enjoying a cold beverage.
Well, I don't know about cold, but
I think I got enough of the weld ground away here. I think I'm ready. I'm just going to cut it with the Sawzall right here. It doesn't need all this length because basically it's going to be welded around here. I knew I had enough welds done. Pretty good fit there. We should test fitting it just to see if the tie rod's still going to be running straight. I don't know, from here, hard to tell, but looking at it from the rear, we'll get there. Patience. Looks like the passenger side looks pretty straight. The driver's side might be towed out a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and clearance that tie rod a little bit more. That's some fine-ass old world craftsmanship shit right there. Okay, other mat. 7. Wow, that's a lot. Well, it's been a couple hours. Work's kind of slowed down. I'm still working on my battery tray here. Yeah, the trick about doing hydraulic steering on these, and where's the ram at? It's out there.
It's out there.
Basically, the first thing you got to do is find out where you can even find room to put it, and then work with those constraints, which is what we've been dealing with here. Talking about it, thinking about it, measuring, and we finally come up with a plan. We've cut the two ends off the cylinder so we can turn them 90 degrees. Hey, those are still hot.
I was gonna say, they're probably warm.
Yeah. And yeah, Aaron's working on that. I'm going to drop my battery box project again for a while, and I'm going to get the old mount off of here while he's working on welding those tabs back on the cylinder. And yeah, he pointed this out to me. This mount here is, I don't know, it almost looks like the original mount was built in one piece, but for some reason that didn't work out, so it was cut off and then put on top, and there's a 1/4 inch piece here, and if I'm seeing this right, it looks like all that force basically went through this 1/4 inch piece. And yeah, we were discussing whether this piece of, what's that, 5/8? A chunk of a tractor drawbar or something. That's what we're going to use for the mounts that are going to weld to the housing and the tie rod. After considering, yeah, what that was doing with a 1/4 inch piece in there, we're feeling pretty warm and fuzzy about that, even though initially we probably would have went with something thicker than that, but that's basically about all I got around here at the moment, other than some 1/2 inch stuff that we dragged up here as well.
Yeah.
Aight?
Aight.
Twice now he's douched himself with hydraulic fluid, and I didn't get to record it. The last time was epic. That was my fault for not having... I didn't even get to see the second one.
I took a face.
I heard the thump, and I walked out the door out there. He had the cylinder in the vise. I don't know how he did it. We was having trouble getting the thing to move. I went to go get a bigger pry bar, and I come walking out back out there, and he couldn't even see. He had so much hydraulic fluid all over his face. I had to go get him some towels.
Yeah.
Always fun.
It's a good time in the shop.
Yeah. Day's getting away from us.
I know.
Had a visitor. That took a little time away. I'm still working on this damn battery tray.
And I'm still working on a tie rod and hydraulic steering.
Yeah, to be fair, I stop once in a while and help Aaron out. There's just some things that go a hell of a lot easier with two people holding something in place while it needs measured. Did end up cutting this off, rotating them 90 degrees. Thought I was going to have to, him. When I ordered this cylinder, I had every intention of modifying this end and possibly not even using this, but it is going to fit in there this way. Now these are turned 90 degrees. Now he's making the mounting tabs. This one's going to go on the tie rod. So he's closing in on his goal for the day. I'm not anywhere near mine. I haven't so much as touched a single bit of wiring. Damn it, he didn't get sprayed this time.
Not this time.
Hey, you missed one.
Fire bad. No
Fire
fire.
fun. Careful when you're welding, folks. There's a bucket of water right there, you know.
Good enough.
Feels pretty good there. As you were.
Cleaning some metal up.
Well, I didn't ask what you were doing. I said as you were.
Huh?
I didn't ask what you were doing. I said as you were. As in continue, peasants. Back to work.
Oh, okay. Well,
I didn't need to hear your goddamn life story. I just wanted to see you working.
hey, I'm sorry. You still working on that battery box?
Yes, I'm still working on the battery box.
Huh. Tell me what you think. It could take more.
I'll never be done with this, you know. It's finally fucking done.
Oh, Fancy Pants McGee over here.
Lovely. Anyway, he's about got the steering done here. We keep thinking we need to shorten the end up right there that goes on the axle housing, because as this steers, your tie rod tucks in tighter. So we want to get that tucked in as tight as possible. Plus, the shorter the mount, the less leverage it's going to exert on the welds.
Everybody needs one of those.
Oh, that is one of the best fabrication tools I've ever got. The blades are pricey as hell, but so much better than just a normal ass chop saw. I think you could get a little more even, but that'll probably be enough.
I think that's pretty good myself.
Yeah.
Right there, or does it need to go here? Here. Can you see it?
Oh, I'm concentrating on your crotch.
Oh, dang.
Drop your pen.
You had me all Twitter page.
You're looking for your vertical height, right?
Yeah. If I can fucking ever get this to...
What are you doing over there?
I'm fighting everything. There.
Maybe up a little more. Yeah, looks good right there.
Right there, that's your happy spot?
From where I'm standing, that looks pretty level.
Okay.
Want me to mark that with a Sharpie?
No, I know exactly where that goes. Right above the hole.
You're smart like that.
Not really.
Now that the battery box is done, I had a little time to, you know, come up with this nice little keychain for Danny. It glows in the dark too, I'm told. Are you jealous?
Slightly.
Let's go driver.
Yep.
If it showed up on the camera there, as the steering went this way, the tie rod has to swing in with the arc of the knuckle and it gets closer. Plenty of room there. We got I'd say 1.25 inches there, so yeah. Shouldn't matter going the other way, but we'll try it anyway. Everything looks good to me. Excelente. Excelente. Here's the finished result. Lipstick on a pig, you might call it. Something nice, shiny, new on this rig. Not like my rusty old battery tray that took me all day.
Pretty sweet.
Well, that keychain might be shiny by now. Yeah, it's starting to glow there.
Oh, man.
I'm getting excited. Darkness has fallen. We're done with this for now. Thank you, sir.
You are welcome.
That was a huge, huge step in getting this thing ready. Yeah. What do you think, Kitty?
Exactly. Yep, it's time to go home.
Time for me to go in and poop.
Yep.
Thanks again.
Not a problem. And what do you say to me?
Look after your cornhole, bud. Well, it's been a couple of weeks now, as you can tell by the weeds growing up around it, but I am back to work on it. I got the adapters for the hydraulic cylinder, so I got the lines hooked back up. Might redo this one, might get another 90 here, pointed out forward, because there's plenty of hose there. I could just reroute that in right in here. I'm afraid suspension bottoms out pretty hard here. It could hit that. But, as far as the wiring goes, I'm doing pretty good. I got everything up here at the front in the engine compartment done. It's hooked up and it's strung. It's not hooked up in its final destination. The fan here, got it grounded. The power wires running through the frame back there to the solenoid. Now this solenoid is also going to power up the electric fans for this, and I'm going to use it to do the fuel pump too, seeing as how it's back here. I note on the battery tray, before the battery was bolted down over there at an angle, which an Optima doesn't care about that. But you never know, this thing might not always have an Optima in it, and that's why I made the tray so much bigger, so you can fit something a lot bigger in it. It gives you a lot more options. Got a power cord here. It's not done yet. It's run through the frame. Now this cable will always be hot. It's running through the frame here, up to the starter. Now because this is always going to be hot, I've got my alternator charging wire running to it. And I'm also feeding my ignition switch for the power source off of it as well. Got the starter activation solenoid wire that's run up into the dash. This is, okay, yeah, that's the electric fan for the power steering cooler. This was the activation wire for the solenoid back there. I got the trigger wire for the alternator. That's run up in there. Like I said, nothing's hooked up to the dash yet. I just have it ran through the dash. And I even remembered to get the power wire for the alternator, not the alternator, the distributor right there. Now, wiring work is tedious and boring, and there is no way to film this and make it interesting, so I'm not even going to try that, as you can see. I'm just going to catch you up on it once in a while as I go along, or if I have to run into any problems. But I need to get back to work. Hot one out here today. I believe I got everything back here hooked up. Got the fuel pump running up over to the solenoid. This other wire is for the electric fan up front there for the power steering. Got the big fans for this radiator hooked up. Got the power end of the solenoid hooked up, the trigger. That is all ready to go. I think the only thing I've got left to do is to get underneath here and hook everything up to the switches and whatnot. Well, as you can see, compared to before, there's very little going through this firewall. I do need to wrap that with some sort of a piece of split fuel line, because that is very jagged. But let's take a look at what we got. Now, we've still got the oil pressure gauge and the temperature gauge. I got rid of the charging gauge. Those are useless in my opinion. I've got 5 wires coming in here now. That's it. This makes the starter crank. This other green one should be for the solenoid. The one back here that activates the fans and the fuel pump. This is constantly hot. That's going to feed this switch. This one black wire is the alternator that powers up the fields in the alternator, makes it charge. And this one powers up the distributor. Pretty simple. Ran into a little bit of a problem. My little idea here with having an ignition cut out isn't going to work for now because this switch is totally dead. I cannot get it to do anything. There's no continuity through this thing, either with the button pulled or pushed. So that's just going to have to go by the wayside for now. Now, this is the tractor switch. Looking at the back of that, you can clearly see everything is marked. You've got battery right here. That'll be my power coming in. That's always hot. This is the crank. And this is, it says ignition, but that's whatever you want to be hot with the key on. There's also an accessory here, but I don't believe I'll be using that. So I did actually go ahead and use the accessory post on this. I've run into some of these tractor switches where the accessory post was only hot when you had the key in the accessory position, but this one actually is hot when the key is in the on position. So I just put the ignition onto the ignition post. I've already hooked up the ground wire back there. There's no smoke rolling from anywhere, no funny noises. Okay, let's see what we get. Here's the fuel pump, here's the fans going. Yep, I hear the throttle going too. Let's see if she cranks. Off. And I guess if you wanted to leave your fans running with the engine off, you could turn accessory on. Of course, your fuel pump's going to run too, the way I got it wired, but oh well. I'm calling that a win, folks. As you can see, this is an Edelbrock carb. I really like Edelbrock carbs. So with that in mind, whoop, look out, kitty. I've got the off-road needle seats here. Additionally, I already mentioned this. Look at this. It's just got tape over this stuff. Yeah, that should go to the PCV, which this has like a racing type valve cover setup on it. So I will rectify that as well. Uh-oh, got a cat fight brewing here. Dun, dun, dun. These two kitties don't like each other. I believe I got this ready to pull the top off. Got all 8 of these screws out. I went ahead and pulled the metering rods out as well. And let's see, you got to unhook this linkage from the accelerator pump, and this is part of your choke, I believe, over here, or something like that. Anyway, it's ready to go. Let's pull it off, see how it looks inside. A little bit of a debris. Now the first thing I'm going to do, as you can see, I've got some tape blocking that off. I'm going to fill this entire channel with JB weld. Tip side to side, it would let all the fuel from one float bowl run into the other. That should alleviate that part of the equation. Well, that didn't go in there as smoothly as I'd hoped. I guess I'm just going to let that dry, and then I will have to pull these out. If I'm going to do that, I was probably going to tear up the gaskets, so I just will go ahead and get a rebuild kit. But anyway, once I do tear all this apart, I'll just hit this with a sander and flatten that out. Alright, the JB weld's pretty well dried. As dried as it's going to get anyway. I am doing another modification. This carburetor is not specifically off-road, it's just kind of a circumstantial thing. Air cleaner we picked up at a swap meet. Got this for 20 bucks. It was the housing, the K&N filter, and this pre-filter. That mesh kind of baggy thing that goes around it. Unfortunately, well, one of the main reasons for getting it was because of this, I don't know, hold down wing nut, whatever you want to call it. Got a nice O-ring in it, which will seal down against that lid, because this rig's probably going to sit outside. Even if it wasn't sitting outside, it's going to be playing in the mud and whatnot, and this will seal up that housing from having rainwater that is inevitably going to sit in that divot. And the O-ring will prevent that rainwater from seeping through down into the carburetor, through the carburetor, and into the engine. But unfortunately, this uses a 5/16 stud, whereas that was quarter. So I'm going to drill and tap that out for the bigger stud. Got the drill bit all measured and marked out for how deep I can go, because I suppose I could see if you broke through that wall down in there, you might end up with a vacuum leak. Wouldn't be much of one, I wouldn't think, but still, no need doing that if I don't have to. So, as you can see there, if it's focusing, there's quite a bit of buildup of JB weld right there. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a flap wheel first, try to get the worst of it down before I hit it with the sander. Got the high spots pretty well knocked down. I think a person that was really good could do that all with that flap wheel, but I don't believe I'm that person. The crossover passage is now effectively eliminated. Now I know JB weld holds up pretty well to gasoline. I'm not so sure how well it's going to hold up to carb and brake cleaner, because yeah, now obviously this thing needs a good thorough cleaning after having aluminum shavings and all this dust from this in it. But it needed it anyway. Well, I decided to pull these racing valve covers off so I can put the ones on and have a PVC setup. And this is what I found. I guess it shouldn't surprise me that there's water in here, because there was water in the cylinders. But when I go, you know, I checked the oil before we started it. I never did check it after it ran. But checking the dipstick, it looks good. So I'm going to guess that is just condensation from it sitting around. Another good reason to have a PCV system on it. Anyway, I'll clean that up as best I can. Get these other valve covers on it. Well, on this side, I actually got a little bit of rust started here and there. On that push rod there. Yeah, folks, run a PCV system. So what I ended up doing was using the shop vac to get in there and get the worst of it. And then I just got my towel in there and kind of blotted it up. Hopefully this will be running in a few days or so, soon anyway, and what's left of that will get burned out of there and evaporated. Otherwise, if this thing were going to be sitting a long time before it was going to be run, I would do a much more thorough job about trying to get that out of there. Besides that, I did have a bunch of grinder dust all over this from cleaning all this crap off. Right there, got all that out of there. I'm sure that's at least 30, 40, maybe even 50 pounds, 50, that might be a bit excessive, of useless metal that was doing nothing but looking like a bag of smashed assholes. But anyway, back to work here. Alright, back on the carburetor here. It looks a little weird, doesn't it? Initially, I was just going to soak this in water to help scrape the gasket surfaces off, but I had access to some like industrial soap. So I thought, what the hell? I dumped a little soap in the bucket with it and let it sit for a day. And the soap kind of attacked the finish on the carburetor. So it's kind of a dull industrial gray now. No big deal. I don't think it harmed anything. But anyway, I'm putting this back together. I already showed you the one trick for making this an off-road carb, blocking off that passage. I noticed the top had a little bit of a passage in it too, so I did the same thing. I know there's a low spot in there, but that shouldn't matter, because all that's going to really matter is if it's blocked off at some point, which it should be here and here should be fine. Now, another thing you can do to make this an off-road carb is your accelerator pump squirter right here. These come, here's the check ball right here. Take that and put it right in there. Plop. Now, normally these come with this little weight that goes on it, on top of the check ball. But for the off-road kit, well, you don't even need this for a kit. Every rebuild kit comes with this tiny little spring here. Put that in instead of the weight. Let's just put that in there. Plop. And then, let's see, the gasket, where did it go? Good question. Where did the gasket go? Did I knock it off of there? Must have fell down inside there. But anyway, I'll find the gasket. But, and you pop the squirter on top, just like so. And then the third thing you do is you get these off-road needles and seats. They have tiny little spring-loaded, I don't know what you'd call them, plungers, seats, whatever in them. There's the part number for it. I know this lighting here is kind of shitty. There you go. Off-road needle and seat, $14.65. All right, carbs all together. Just be noted that when you put those off-road needle and seats in here, you are going to have to readjust your floats quite a bit, actually. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have never done these mods before. This is kind of new territory for me. I've only ever done the off-road needle and seats, and that was a long damn time ago before I was aware of the other modifications. And like I said, the thing climbed hills, up and down, tipped up and down just great. It went side to side that I had trouble. So yeah, hopefully blocking that channel off will take care of that problem. Now, the reason I've never done this, even though I like these carbs, is when it comes to off-roading, my go-to is always the Ford 2-barrel. The only reason I'm messing with this is because it came with the vehicle, so I thought, let's give it a try. If for whatever reason this thing does not work out, it's going to get a Ford 2-barrel. Alright, I'm going to have to redo this fuel line. There's like a hard metal line underneath this rubber line. I'm going to trim it back to maybe about here. It's getting in the way of these linkages, and it's just way too long out here. But another bigger issue, this throttle cable is totally fucked, for lack of another word. It will not only is it out of line, I don't know if it's showing up there, kind of out of line that way, but it's definitely out of line this way. And plus, it will not, if I could get in there to show you, it will not hook up. If I hook it up, well, you just have to take my word, when it's hooked up, there is not enough play in this, and the throttle's actually pulled open about that much. So I'm going to have to redo this bracket too. Alright, cobble fabbed up a nice new bracket there out of the old one and a piece of angle iron. It does actually close now, if I can find the damn pedal here. Doesn't quite open all the way though, but we're just gonna run her like this for now. I'm more satisfied that it's actually closing completely now. Do have the fuel line trimmed back, but I am going to go ahead and pump out all that old stale fuel from out of that fuel cell because it smells nasty. That's probably a contributing factor as to why it was running so crappy. Now I've unhooked the ground on this fan and unhooked these fans completely all together. So all that should run is the fuel pump on accessory. So that's weird. Are you kidding me? Is that pump dead already? Actually, I think it might be the battery. Actually, there it goes. It doesn't look horrible, but trust me, it smells bad. Got about 4 or 5 gallons of nasty old fuel out of this. Got maybe 8 or 9 gallons of nice fresh fuel in it. Put a new fuel filter on it. Let's see if she floods. Filling up nicely. I I can't tell if the squirters are working or not. I don't think they are. I better investigate. Not flooding anyway. Well, as you can see, there is fuel in both bowls. The accelerator pump works off of this side. I don't know what's going on. I guess I'll pull the plunger out of there and mess around a little bit. Maybe when that industrial soap attacked the finish, maybe it's not sealing very well. I hope that's not the case. So what I'm finding here is that if I go ahead and add more fuel to this bowl, I can actually get the squirters to work. Makes me wonder if the, let's see, there's like a little notch here that goes down, but it only goes down so far, obviously. Maybe I need to set this float up just a little bit higher. So, setting the float down a little bit, and I also moved the rod up into the shortest radius hole, which should give it more travel on the other side, if I'm not mistaken. And it is working now, not terribly powerful, but as I always like to say, it's better than it was. That howling noise is the power steering pump needing more fluid. Put the air cleaner on, I tightened up the belts. What else did I do? Oh yeah, I found the vacuum line to the transmission was just hanging there. It must have been hooked up to a carburetor in the past, but I found a fitting in my stash. I got it hooked up right to the manifold now. She sounds pretty good. Well, I'm calling the fuel system done. It's time to move on to something else. These are the front tires off of the rig. Why do I have them off? I'm putting tubes in them. Why do I want to put tubes in them? Well, if you've been watching my channel, thank you very much. But you know, any rig that is a serious wheeler, I put tubes in it for one main reason. But there's two reasons for this rig. The one main reason is, when you're out there doing serious wheeling, there's always something, whether it's a rut or a side hill or something, that's always trying to push the bead off of the rim. And especially so because you're running fairly low pressures if it's a serious wheeler. Now, these are 15-inch rims. I'm kind of surprised these are only 8 inches wide. But there is what's called a safety bead here. It's this little lump that goes all the way around. And that kind of holds the bead on there. And that helps. 16.5s don't have that. But sometimes that's just not enough when you're running low pressure and off-roading. So by having a tube in there, it doesn't eliminate the risk of pushing the bead off of the edge of the rim. But if that does happen, the tube is there holding the air in.
It's not a catastrophe. All the air doesn't escape, and then there you are in a muddy rut with a flat tire that's off the bead. Now, on these particular tires, the second reason for putting tubes in them is just because they're so damn dry rotted, I'm sure they're going to leak. These probably would have been okay for staying on these rims. I don't know how long these tires have been on these rims, but these things were rusted on there like a mother. I had a hell of a time getting these things broke down. But they're broke down now. I'm going to put the tubes in. Actually, what I'm doing here, what I like to do when I'm putting the tube in something, I'll put the tube inside the tire and inflate it, and I'll get a measurement from where the valve stem is to the edge of the tire out here, just in case I need to re-drill a hole in the rim, which I do for these. Incidentally, these are somebody else's homemade rims. You can see the cut right there. This center actually used to be flipped around the other way and was back this way. This used to be the back side of the wheel. Somebody cut the center out, flipped it over, and then put it on this side to get a lot of offset. But that's fine. I can deal with that. Looks like I'm gonna have to re-drill the hole. Actually, that one might actually work. I think it's gonna be too far away. My measurement was 1 3/4 from here to where the hole needs to be, so it's probably gonna be right around there. Got the new holes drilled. Got the old ones welded and ground down. Even had to fix the previous modification where the last guy that cut these wheels up, modified them, had welded up the holes. They were a little jagged to be putting a tube in there. Oh, now I just have to wrestle these big bastards back together. Well, son of a bitch, they're finally done. I thought these were going to be fairly easy. Man, they fought me coming off and going back on. Just the combination of the way the center's been flipped backwards in the rim shell and how narrow the rim is, these were real efforts to get those tubes in. I had to do some pretty sketchy and questionable stuff to get them in there. I hope I didn't pinch the tubes. I've got 20 pounds in each one of them. Naturally, there's going to be a little bit of leak down because there's always air trapped between the tube and the tire. But yeah, if I pinch the tube, I'll know it in the morning when I come back out here. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but these are 44-inch tires. These are Gumbo Mutter 18.5 44.15. I hear a leak already. I hope that's just air escaping from... Oh my god, that's going to suck if I have to take these apart again and fix the tube. That is a big air leak. Son of a bitch. Oh, there, it just quit. Oh. Yes, thank you. It's just air escaping from between the tube and the tire. I hope. No, it's got to be it. If that tube was leaking, it'd still be coming out of there. Anyway, if you're wondering what size tube to put in a 44-inch tire, these are the ones I got. Got them at Mills Fleet Farm. Right to there. Paid $180 for all 4 of them. But I'm going to call it a night. My back's killing me after wrestling these things around. Hopefully I'll be able to function tomorrow. Alrighty, idly, it's the next afternoon. This one's still holding 20 pounds. This one has like 17 in it. So I'm going to call them good. I'm going to assume that loss of 3 pounds in this was just the air that was trapped between the tube and the tire. Before I bolt them back on though, I have found that this hub is a little bit loose. Let's see if I can... Not holding that very well, am I? There we go. Clearly not the kingpins, it is in the bearings. The other side seems to be pretty good. But I am going to pop that side open, see if that needs snug down. Maybe once I get in there I might find that the wheel bearings could use some servicing and some fresh grease. But for some reason the itch to do some cleanup has hit me again. I'm thinking I might take a couple minutes to remove all these unnecessary brackets. I might even sawzall this arm off because it's doing nothing.
if I don't get this thing done in time, it's because of doing crap like that. But I don't know why that stuff, just the older I get, the more that bothers me, having unnecessary stuff like that on there. All right, got them all cut off. Hey, cat, can you eat a little more quiet back there? Jesus. Chomp, chomp, chew, crunch. What the hell? Have a little consideration here, would you? Ah, some people. Anyway, let's take a look. I know this might seem silly to people, and I wouldn't say you're wrong. But it might not make a difference to some people, but I get satisfaction from cleaning that stuff up. Now the other side, the brackets had already been removed, but they left the jagged old rivets in the frame, so I got those all cleaned up and knocked out. Now that I got that out of my system, I can go ahead and start working on stuff that matters. So, pulling the cap off, you can clearly see there's signs of water in there. Well, ain't showing up too well on the camera, but that's definitely water. You see some right down in there too. So I'll probably be pulling this one off of there and checking out the bearings. This side actually looks pretty good. Got some sort of weird pink grease in there. Now here's something interesting. I've heard of people doing this, but I've never done it myself. Putting a grease zert on the hub, and then once you get it all together, you just pump that son of a bitch full of grease. The theory is if the entire hub is full of grease, there's no room for water to get in. So I get the feeling by all the grease in this cap that this one has been pumped full of grease. This one doesn't really show signs of that. Well, I'm going to get it tore apart and we'll give you a report on it from there. As you can plainly see, this grease in here definitely needs some attention. So I'm going to get my little scrubby pan and some gasoline out and get to work on that. So here is the damage. Now when I was taking this thing apart, I thought I could feel grit inside there in the grease that was in that hub. Yeah, these are the bearings that came out of it. As you can see, they are rusty and pitted. Here's the races. Now, here's what I'm going to replace it with. I have found over the years, whenever I scrap a vehicle that has a Dana 60 or 70 rear axle in it, I always pillage the wheel bearings and the races out of them, because these will fit in a Dana 60 hub. This has saved me many dollars over the years. I have quite the stash of these. So yeah, that will be good. Additionally, this is not the seal that came out of this hub. This is also a seal that I salvaged from a rear 60 or 70. It should work in this, but the old seal, I already threw it in the trash already. But the old seal was not even touching the sealing surface, which as you can see is also all rusty and pitted. This needs to be have a speedy sleeve put on it, but that just won't do for now. I'm just going to, yeah, I don't know if that old seal was the wrong seal, if it was wore out. It looked pretty good, but yeah, it was just not even touching. I can definitely feel a groove in there. But anyway, I've got everything cleaned up, and for now I'm just going to have to assemble it the way it is. Maybe sometime in the future I'll get around to putting a speedy sleeve on that spindle. Maybe the reason that these are so messed up is because that seal was not sealing and a bunch of dirt and mud got in through the back. Although honestly, I'm not that enamored over, I like the drive puck idea that these have instead of a lockout, but I've found that this dust cover that goes over it is not really good for keeping out water and mud. Alright, losing my daylight here. It's all back together. Kind of going back to what I was saying about these. In my lifetime, I've never really messed with more than a couple of these, to be fair. I don't know if maybe originally from the factory if they had some sort of a seal in them, but I feel like they don't seal up as well because a lockout, typically all the lockouts I've ever dealt with had a little O-ring that goes around in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just smear a layer of RTV on that. I might just go ahead and do the other side too before I put the wheels on it, but other than that, yeah, I'm ready to put the wheels on this thing, get it off the jack stands, do some work on the rear tires and wheels. Got a problem here, folks. See that? Looks like we got a stuck caliper on the rear. Took this out for a little joyride after getting the front tires on it. Initially, it had no reverse. Had to put a couple quarts in the transmission, get reverse working. All I was getting was first gear. Got everything working there now. Did a little, yeah, just easy testing, mostly just trying to get the transmission work. Back up here to the shop door and I see smoke rolling out of here. Like, what the hell is that? Yeah, it is clearly coming from the brake caliper. So one more thing to take care of. Hooray for me. Other than that, it seemed to run pretty good. But, it sure as hell don't turn very good. I did notice that like I mentioned before, the front differential is welded and the front U-joints should be in phase when you do that, or so I've read and heard, whether that's true or not, but we'll address that some other time. I'm not going to be the one wheeling this, so it's not going to be my problem. It is the next morning. I did not really feel like troubleshooting this shit in the dark. They have released now. This one was dragging quite a bit too, but this one was where most of the problem was because there was actually smoke rolling out of that. They're free now. I did start it up and I pushed on that pedal as hard as I could, seeing if I could get them to stick again, and I couldn't. Now I don't know if it was the caliper was stuck and it's freed itself up, or one of these hoses is coming apart internally and not letting the fluid come back through it. I have had that happen on rigs before. But yeah, we're just going to ignore that for now and hope it's okay. But I would like to point out, and I found this out the hard way, I can't criticize the guy that built this because I have done this too. This has way too much brakes in the rear. Way too much. And what happens is your brake pads back here wear out because your rear brakes are way too effective. Your front brakes aren't doing enough. I'm probably going to do a bad job of explaining this, but because you're running these big ass calipers on the rear, they're doing the work of braking pretty much all four wheels through the mechanical linkage of the drive shafts and transfer case. My big orange buggy is that way, the little bolted tire rig is that way, and I ran into this with my Mustang as well. I went through 4 iterations of brakes on my Mustang before I finally got it where I wanted it. It wasn't as critical on the buggies because they're always locked into 4-wheel drive, but the Mustang I could definitely tell because the rear brakes would just lock up way too easy. That's what's going on here. If this thing was took out of 4-wheel drive and driven and you'd stab the brake pedal hard enough, these rear end would lock up no problem. I guess it doesn't really hurt anything other than, yeah, you're just constantly going through rear pads and your front pads hardly ever. But we're just going to leave that for now because we've only got a couple of days to have this thing ready. As you may know, I'm not a full-time YouTuber. I have a job I have to go to, so I don't have that many hours to get this thing ready in a couple of days. So we're just going to move on to the rear tires, wheels, and hope the brakes work out. If they don't, if they end up locking up while we're out there wheeling, I will probably unhook a brake line between the master cylinder and where it drops down to the axle, bend it over on itself and smash it flat with a hammer or whatever and totally take the rear brakes out of the picture, and that'll work. It's not an ideal situation, but you're kind of flipping at 180 of what it was. Instead of the rear brakes doing all the work now, the front brakes will be doing all the work, and they'll be stopping the rear tires through the mechanical linkage of the ring and pinions, the drive shafts, and the transfer case. Enough blabbing, I need to get to work. Alright folks, sit back and listen to me blather about 16.5 rims. Why am I talking about 16.5 rims? The rims on the front of this are 15s, but the other pair are 16.5s. They're still both 44 inches tall, both pairs that is. Those of you that know 16.5s know that there is no safety bead here, like a 15 or a 16 has. And if you lose air pressure, I mean, it's extremely easy to knock a 16.5 tire off the wheel. Well, off the bead anyway. Because there's nothing here. It's just a nice gentle slope. I mean, you can take a 16.5 and deflate it, and oftentimes it'll fall off by itself, and if it doesn't, you just give it a kick with your toe and it'll pop right off of there. Now, why is that an issue, you're thinking? Because I'm putting tubes in them. Well, the safety bead that should be here, that's on a 15, that is your first line of defense. The tube is just kind of a secondary line of defense in case it does pop itself off of there. Now, when you do have that bead here, and the tire seats, and it makes that whoomp gunshot sound, it's kind of locked to the tire. Not as good as a bead lock, granted,
but it's on there. So I'm afraid that with these 16.5s running really low pressure, yeah, only a couple pounds of pressure is not going to be enough to keep that bead seated against the wheel, and the wheel could spin inside the tire. And with the tube in there, what's it going to do? Because the tube is it's stuck to the wheel, but all the friction is going to be between the tire and the tube, and it's just going to shear the valve stem off. Now, here's another 16.5. You rarely ever see this on a 16.5 rim, but there is a safety bead there. So, well, it's kind of narrow, granted. So, I've got two of these. Well, I had two. I've got one now, because here's the other one. I think it's pretty obvious what I've done here. I've widened it out by 3 inches. So, hopefully these safety beads there will pay off for all the work I've put into this. I wanted to do this one as an experiment before I'll show you the steps I went through with the second one. Now that I've done the second one will go quicker and I can show it. Additionally, a nice thing about these ones is, I don't know if I can show you, those rims that were on it, they have a lot less back spacing than this. So this will get these tires out a little bit wider, because I don't know if you ever noticed it. These front tires were sticking out a lot more than the rears, and it looked a little goofy. It's not going to be a big difference. Maybe, I don't know, 2 inches for each wheel, looks like maybe. But I think that'll make a difference. If that's not enough, we'll find some wheel spacers for it. But right now, this is all, don't look at my welds. I think it's time for me to get a new lens for my welding helmet, because I can't see shit today to weld. I've got these cleaned up to where there's no sharp edges to chew on the tube, but I'm still going to put a couple strips of Gorilla Tape over these welds, get the valve stem hole drilled for it, and get one of these mounted up. Alright folks, time to find out if the safety beads on this rim were worth the effort. Let's see if it has that nice satisfying boom when it fucking seats. You'll pardon my French. I hope it was worth the effort. One. That took about 8 pounds for that backside to seat. There we go. 15 pounds. That's pretty good. Alright, I'm going to call the first one a success. Let's go ahead and do the second, and I'll show you what all I did. I don't have that much time for today. It's supposed to be raining and storming tomorrow, so I better get my outside tasks done while I can. Let's see here. Voila! They're full of shit. It ain't raining and storming today. Kind of humid though, so if you're lucky I might lose my shirt. Alright, so now this is not very thick stuff. It is probably only half as thick as what the wheel is made of, but it's what I've got. It's close to the right size that I could modify it, and those of you out there that are fabricators like me know that most of the fun in fabricating is the chance of catastrophic failure.
Alright, I spared you the tediousness of watching me get this ring sized and all cleaned up and ready for welding, but I think you get the idea of what I've done here. I've used this hose clamp to squeeze it down to the size that I need. I'm going to go in, start tack welding it all together, put the other end of the rim on it, tack that on, then we'll see how good the fit is. Alright, so now the hose clamp would not get the ends tight enough. I had to go in there, these welding clamps, get in there. Well, kind of hard to explain, hard to show. I had to get in there, give her a squeeze, and then tack weld down those ends. This one didn't quite get squeezed enough, but it's good enough for me. Alright, only thing left now to do is burn it all together. Well, as you can see, I'm sweating profusely here. I've got it pushed out into the sun so I can see. I don't know what the hell's going on with that helmet. I just cannot see nothing through that. Cool off here for a minute and then get back to it. When I can actually get in the right light and see what I'm doing, I can lay down a pretty good bead of weld. But otherwise, wow, this looks nasty. I'm all over the place. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go into town a little later down and see if I can find a new lens for this thing. I ain't stacking dimes, that's for damn sure. The moment of truth has arrived. We're out here to Myobe, and it's been raining all morning. It just got started a few minutes ago. But it's wheeling. Got a small little party here. So I was in such a mad hurry to get this thing ready, I totally forgot to throw a timing light on it and get a base timing set for it. But luckily Aaron was willing to step up and give it a shot out in the field.
Oh, judging from where the vacuum advances, is it loose or is it tight?
It should be tight.
Oh, it's loose.
Is it?
Yeah, I just turned it.
Oh, damn.
Started up.
Must not have tightened it from when we was messing with it when we brought it home. It is. It's brand new.
He just put it on.
Yeah, Chinese crap. Yeah. Aaron wants to play at the timing on this because apparently I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Yeah, you got to find just the right spot on it. God damn, that's a lot. didn't seem very snappy to me. It kind of... I was over here and I could see the linkage, and there was like a hesitation when he stomped it.
Go ahead and snap it. Shut it off. Go ahead and try to restart. Starter don't sound the best either.
It's better than the last one. Coming through indeed. Oh, splat. Augered right into that center of mud. All right, there we go. He's moving now. Sounds angry today.
Drive here. No, on the hill.
Well, from what I'm seeing, the U-joints look okay.
Breaking other stuff yet?
Oh. Not enough fuel?
The brakes work really good.
I don't know what you're doing, but it's awesome. Most of the stuff we've got is
I don't know, sounds like the front to me.
yeah, I think it's the front wall. But it's
fuel delivery problem. Now, as you probably noticed there, every time this thing tried to climb a long, steep hill, it seemed like the fuel was an issue. It was cutting out, not getting fuel. That's kind of the conclusion we all came to. Just to be sure, because I think I mentioned that the ignition switch was screwy. There's just kind of a dead spot in there. I did go ahead, just for the process of elimination, I took the power wire that comes off of the switch going to the distributor, and I rewired it onto the switch to be hot all the time, thinking that, you know, maybe that was the cause. As it was bouncing its way up a hill, it was jiggling around the switch, causing a dead spot. I kind of doubted that was the issue, but I thought I would eliminate that being an issue anyway. Turns out, yeah, that didn't help at all. So not solving the problem, but you know, it finally got to the top of the hill. We moved on down the trail. Then it wasn't very far down the trail we ran into our next problem, which was the cooling system in this thing boiled over.
Bubbles. You can feel bubbles in the hole.
Yeah, it's squirting bubbles out there. There it just dropped. Can't feel anything now.
This one's hotter than that.
What's that?
I said that hose is hotter than that.
There what?
Things are starting to happen.
It's starting to, you hear it percolating down through the line.
We're back there.
Hey, nice dick!
Hey, man,
Congratulations!
hey, coming from you, coming from you, that means something.
Now, apparently it had an air bubble trapped in the system somewhere. Why it didn't overheat before this, I don't know, because we were at the farthest back corner of the property. I suppose it was maybe cooler at that point and the sun was coming out. Doesn't matter, it overheated. We finally got the air bubble bled out right up there at the engine, and we tried to refill the cooling system. We used way too much of our drinking water trying to refill it, and yeah, we had a little bit left, but we wanted to have something to drink the rest of the day. So finally Troy, he went back out to the parking area, got a couple jugs of water that he always keeps in his truck for this kind of thing, and he brought those back, and even those 2 gallons weren't enough. So I went down to the creek and managed to find a spot with some clean water and got another, I don't know, 2 gallons. Brought them back to the rig, and that finally got it filled up, and away we went again. Well, Mr. Chevy Doctor Aaron has determined that it is trailworthy again. But, you know, not surprisingly, we ended up at some climbs again, and yeah, right back to the same boat with it not being able to get up hills. So what we're going to do here is try to eliminate the angle out of the factor. I got him tied to this tree. I'm going to have him pull up the slack and then just stand on it and see if it runs out of fuel here. If it doesn't, then it's clearly an angle issue.
What gear are you in?
Low. Running high?
No, it seems like it ought to spin them up more than that in low. Seems like it ought to have more than that, but at least it's, yeah, it is staying with it. Aaron's playing with the timing some more. Thinks it has too much advance. Give us another one. Okay, so it is clearly an angle issue, but it is not flooding, obviously, because there's no cloud of black smoke. Maybe I need to get in there and reset those floats. One last try. No. We raised the floats a little more, seeing, thought maybe it was starving the front jets.
Try it.
So now we're going to try backwards. Or he's going to try backwards. See what effect that has on tipping the carburetor that direction. Yes, there's clearly something fucky going on here.
Hey, it didn't die.
Yeah.
It didn't cut out and die. But
That was a tree there.
God damn it, that was. Jump down!
What?
Just come back down!
I can't, I'm calling the tree.
Just foot forward and steer this way. There you go. You should be able to go around that way without trying to go up the hill. Or the hill over there is not as steep, I don't think.
No, it's not
I think it's going to be steep enough though, but
yeah.
what the hell? You're here to wheel, give it a shot.
Try.
Yeah! Woo!
I'm not getting out of this.
Your front's not turning. front locker in the billy goat. Aaron got away okay, except he tore one of his tubes out of his firewall. I believe Troy didn't have any real issues today. And while Danny had some issues, he still drove it on the trailer. Okay, so I think I've given you all the clues that you need to come up with the solution to the fuel issue. I think I have anyway. I haven't got it fixed yet. It's not the carburetor. I believe it has a weak fuel pump, or if the fuel pump's not weak, it's not up to the job, and let me show you why. Now, as we've seen before, this is the fuel pump. Any of you that know, electric fuel pumps are not designed to pull fuel, and it is having to pull fuel from the top of the tank there. It should be tapping it from the bottom of the tank, but there's no place to do that, obviously. Plus, maybe another factor of it is that a hot coolant line running next to it. That could be part of it, but I think mostly whether the fuel pump is weak or just not up to pulling it. But why was it doing it on hills? Because when you get going up hills, the nose goes uphill, and now that fuel pump has to pump the fuel up a hill too. That's why it seemed to do respectable on level ground, but it was really just top notch when he backed up that hill. So I will be addressing that issue. So what else needs addressed? Well, in the videos you probably heard the steering squeaking and squawking a lot. I contacted the builder of it, and he said he did kind of hot rod this power steering pump. It's a mod we back in my day we used to call the West Texas Off-Road mod, because it was a business, I don't know if they still exist or not, West Texas Off-Road. They had a website you could go to, and they had instructions of how to take one of these Saginaw pumps and modify it to put out more pressure and more flow, and we kind of all did that. I don't know if that's still a thing. I still do that. But yeah, Chris, the builder, he said he had done that with his pump. So I think the squeaking and squawking, and yeah, Danny said every once in a while, well, not once in a while, it was fairly often, the steering wheel would just kind of have a kick to it. So I'm thinking it's probably the steering valve. Right there. Now, Chris, the builder, he told me this was off of a Massey Ferguson combine. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I suspect that's part of the problem. I found this steering valve in my shed. I have no idea what it's off of, but the bolt pattern looks correct. And I don't know about the splines yet. I haven't checked that, but I believe that's going to be what I try to get the steering sorted out. Also, the driver said there was issues with the rear brakes, which didn't surprise me because we already covered that, how they were dragging here. How close that master cylinder is to the exhaust manifold. It is ridiculously close, in case I didn't show it. I'm not sure I did or not. That was an area of concern when I went to look at this thing. Look at that. Look how close that thing is. He said at one point, I wasn't around, but at one point, yeah, as the day went on, the brakes got worse and worse. And I'm guessing it had to do with the fluid in here getting hot. But he said at one point, someone pointed out to him that the fluid was just boiling out of there because it was so hot. So that is definitely an issue. I'm going to remove that, move it way up here on the firewall, redo the pedal ratio like I wanted to do. I wanted to do that before this, but just didn't have time. I might even put a Hydro Boost on this. I found one in a junkyard. If I make it back up to the junkyard to get that, I might do that. I'd sure like Hydro Boost setups on these. Now also, he said the rear brakes were dragging, as I mentioned. I think I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of these big old dual piston calipers. These are off like a late 70s Ford. And like I said before, that's just way too much brake in the rear. I've got these GM full-size calipers. I bought these at a swap meet, yeah, this past spring. $10 for the calipers, and they come with these braided stainless steel lines and pads and everything. I'll get some weld-on brackets ordered for these and put these on the back of that. That should take care of the rear brakes. Hopefully that's what was causing them to drag, was either the calipers that were on there were kind of sticking, or maybe the lines were breaking down internally and not letting the pressure return back. Now obviously this video was about the buggy out there, but after watching that wheeling, if anybody was curious about what happened to the billy goat here with the front end noise, I do have it tore apart. Just got that done a little bit ago. I was assuming it was the locker. No, the torque locker is just fine. Let's see here. Yes, stripped all the teeth off of the ring gear in one spot. Looks like this buggy is going to be in limbo for a while. I'm going to try to decide, is it time to go step clear up to a front 60? I don't really want to do that. I don't want to add that weight and lose the ground clearance of the 44. I'm kind of leaning more towards putting a high pinion 44 in this, because this is a low pinion one out of a high boy. You gain, I think, 20% strength going to a high pinion ring and pinion. Plus, there is a way to fit Dana 50 gears into a Dana 44 housing, and supposedly you gain 40% more strength there. I don't know. I need to think about this, do some research, maybe just sit back and see what I can collect the swap meets for a while. Maybe that'll help. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a long journey, and there is more journey to come. Do you want to see more of this, the improvements that I make to it? Well, whether you want to see it or not, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to film it, and I'm going to put it on the channel. If you don't want to see it, don't watch it. But anyway, until next time.
Watch out for your cornhole, bud.